Good afternoon, everyone. As Ree said, I'm Helen Rennie. I'm a rider psychology coach at my own business, Rezone Coaching, which I set up almost 3 years ago to the day to focus on rider mindset. Now, the equestrian world is not the only sport I love, but it is the sport I love working in the most. And so that's what I do full time, working with riders, very much like you. So in terms of just a quick kind of overview of what I do. Effectively, what I'm here to do is to help riders control their thinking, how they're feeling, which then impacts on how they ride. And effectively, what I'm doing when I work with riders is transforming their confidence and their focus so that what they can do is they can be confident in any kind of situation and adapt to any challenges. And that ultimately has an impact on the kind of results they achieve, whether that's in a competition, out hacking in a lesson, or simply just working with their horse on their own at home. So I work one-to-one with riders. That's most of the work I do is one-to-one. And I do that over Skype, the joys of technology, Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp, Facebook video call, and also the more traditional medium of phone. And I work with riders from the ages of 12 to 74 at the moment. And effectively, what I do is work with riders across the world because of technology. I can work with riders in the UK, in Ireland. I'm working with riders in the US, Canada, and Australia as well. So that's a little bit about what I do. In terms of the types of riders I work with, it's a really big range. It ranges from riders who have had falls, who want to get back to riding the way they did before their accident, to riders who simply want more confidence, want to feel more focused, whether that's at home or a competition, so that they can enjoy their horse. Because a lot of what we do is about enjoyment. It's about fulfillment and, yeah, passion, I guess, for the sport. So today what I'm going to do is talk you through some confidence strategies, kind of whistle-stop tour. This is a massive subject area, so I'm just going to give you a flavour for this subject matter today. And as we go through this, you may well identify with a little bit of what I say or quite a lot of what I say. So just invite you to come at this with a really open mind. So without further ado, let's talk about what psychology is really all about. In the context of riding, it's about getting riders into the right state rather than them being in a right state. So what do I mean about being in the right state? Well, my job is to get riders into a state where they consistently can feel confident and focused. However, when riders get into a right state, they actually start to lose control of what they're thinking and feeling. And they become actually unaware of what's going on as well. All they can experience is just this horribly intense moment of fear, of panic sometimes, or simply just feeling like they can't ride anymore, they've forgotten how to ride. So we're going to talk about why that is today. And I'm also going to share with you a framework for understanding your mindset better as well. So let's just talk about the confidence strategies then. There's a big list here. So you can see there's quite a lot of different interventions that can be used. All of these, before I read through them, all of these are skills that you can learn, and anyone can learn them at any age, as is proven by the fact I work with riders across such a broad age range. So the good news is that even if you don't feel you have these skills or these tools at the moment, they are relatively straightforward to learn. So you've got relaxation techniques. These vary from the simple to the complex. For being in the saddle, you need simple relaxation techniques. Positive focus and self-talk. If you've ever felt really confident about something, you'll generally be saying positive things to yourself, encouraging yourself, focusing on what you need to do in that moment. However, if you're not feeling confident, you're feeling nervous, typically you'll be saying negative things to yourself. You might be criticizing yourself, beating yourself up, and that's not a great place to be in. And so a lot of the work I do is to help riders change that. And then you've got self-belief techniques. Self-belief really underpins a lot of confidence and a lot of what rider mindset is all about. And if you have that strong foundation of self-belief, you can really build sustainable confidence that's, makes you more resilient. And as we know in riding, all of us have setbacks from time to time. And self-belief just helps you be more resilient and bounce back from those. Then you've got confidence triggers. This can be anything from words to music to a photo to a video. It's just something that triggers that feeling of confidence. When I work with riders, I do a lot of work to find out what type of trigger is right for them. Mental rehearsal and stress inoculation. These are skills that if you use really well, you can trick your brain into thinking that what you're imagining is real. And actually, we do this a lot when you visualize worst-case scenarios or you think about worst-case scenarios. A lot of the time, you're recreating the bad feeling that goes with that. That is a form of mental rehearsal. It's just not a very good or positive form. But positive mental rehearsal and stress inoculation, which is essentially a desensitization process, are really useful tools and strategies. Then you've got routines and rituals. In a simple, putting this simply, all this means is this is the process that you go through to feel calm and in control. And some riders are not aware of the things that they do to make themselves feel good. Other riders are very aware. But it can be simple things like the process you go through to tack up, the plan you have for competition. All of those things are routines and rituals. And knowing which ones make you feel confident and calm and in control are important. And then finally, you've got hypnosis. You can do two forms of hypnosis. You can hypnotize yourself, which I can teach you how to do that. Or I can do a hypnosis for you. This tends to be the last type of strategy that I will go to. Often the other ones are the more immediate, more effective ones. But sometimes this final strategy is a really useful one to use. Okay, so let's talk about how you get to the place of being able to use those strategies. One of the key skills on top of all of those skills that I've just covered is self-awareness, because if you're aware of what's going on and you start to become aware of the times when your confidence starts to drop, you start to question, you start to doubt yourself, you start to feel the anxiety levels rise. At the point that you start to notice this stuff, that's the time to intervene, not at the point where you're having a total meltdown. At the point of the total meltdown, recovery from that is possible. It's just not very quick. And as we all know, when we're riding, things happen quite fast. So you don't want to be in a position where you're going to have to take 2 or 3 minutes to calm down. So self-awareness is really important. Often I have riders that come and work with me who say, I don't know if you can help me because I've no idea what's going on. And thankfully, because I work with riders full-time, there's hardly ever a problem that I haven't come across before. And so I just ask a series of questions and get them to give me some ideas of what's going on through specific questions. And that normally helps them develop self-awareness. I'm going to talk you through a framework now to help you understand your mindset better, because you probably looked at that list of confidence strategies and thought, hang on a minute, which one's right for me? Where do I start with this stuff? Because there's so much on that list, and each is a very in-depth skill that you could spend a lot of time learning. So I'm going to share with you a framework of 5 rider mindsets that I've created based on my experience from working with riders, that I find to be very effective. And the riders that I work with, that I use this with, absolutely love it because they can identify really easily with what's going on. So as I talk you through this mindset model, you may identify with one, you may identify with a few, or you may identify with all 5. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm also going to tell you, as I talk you through the rider mindsets, which of the strategies would be most effective for that rider mindset. So you can start to think about how this stuff can help. Okay, so let's talk about the first rider mindset. This is the one which tends to be most associated with complete meltdowns. This is where a rider's stress level gets so high that they freeze, they stop riding, their legs turn to jelly, they go onto autopilot, they just feel like they can't ride. Now, this is because when you get to this level of intense stress, anxiety, nerves, the fight-flight response in your brain is the thing that works, and the thing that's not working is the part of your brain that tells you how to ride. It's an ancient response we have in our brains. Your horses all have a fight-flight response. And unfortunately for us, our horses are extremely good at sensing when other animals' fight-flight responses are active. So this is not only bad for the rider, but it's bad for the horse because both tend to end up in a very big anxiety, vicious circle. So what's the key to overcoming this? Well, first of all, identifying when you're starting to feel anxious is a good place to start because typically this is the end point of a stress level that's been increasing and increasing over time. Occasionally, this mindset can be triggered by the memory of a fall, and it can instantaneously create this response, in which case I do work to help remove that trigger. But in all other cases, it's about having relaxation techniques. And just a simple technique is to breathe out slower than you breathe in. So breathe in for a count. I always say to riders, breathe in for a count of 4, out for a count of 7. That will automatically send a relaxation signal to your brain and help switch off the fight-flight response. This rider mindset I call stage fright because it is so intense. So the next rider mindset I call constant critic, and this is really the mindset of self-doubt. It's the one where riders will typically criticize themselves, beat themselves up, focus on the negatives. Now, this one is a key area where I would work on self-belief and positive focus and self-talk. So changing the way you're speaking to yourself, the things you're saying, and also building self-belief is really key here to overcoming this negative cycle of negative focus, negative self-talk and belief. And then the next rider mindset, I call this analysis paralysis. This is where riders are just doing too much darn thinking. They're thinking so much that they're overriding often, and their heads are just too busy. And when this happens, unfortunately for us, our stress level automatically goes up. The key to overcoming this is in the positive focus and self-talk, and in actually keeping things really simple. Because actually, our job as a rider is reasonably simple. It's just sometimes we get really caught up in making sure everything goes right and lots of different detail. So keeping things simple, if you overthink, managing your self-talk is really important. Okay, and then you've got a mindset which I come across an awful lot with riders, particularly those who have had a fall, those riders who have a young, unpredictable horse who pretty much feel out of control in many scenarios because there's a lot of uncertainty with a young horse that's maybe not gone and done very much. This is the mindset of what-if thinking, worst case scenario thinking. I call this distraction attraction. Because generally speaking, your brain's busy thinking about lots of different things. It's busy thinking about the worst possible scenarios that could happen. It's imagining spooking, it's imagining bucking, falling off, lots of different scenarios. And again, you're doing a lot of thinking when this happens, but your stress level is obviously increasing because you're imagining all these horrible things. Now, for this mindset, I normally use a blend of different confidence strategies. So generally speaking, it will come down to self-talk, positive focus. I will also use mental rehearsal and stress inoculation. And I will normally also use some hypnosis, some routines and rituals, because this is all effectively the way to cure this mindset is to give the rider back a sense of control, because often riders feel pretty helpless when they're in this mindset. So that's distraction attraction. And then the fifth and final rider mindset is one I call confident champion, because actually these riders on a day-to-day basis, when they're not putting themselves under pressure, are actually all right. They're doing okay. They're feeling good about themselves. They're feeling pretty confident. But as soon as they put themselves under pressure, particularly at competition, that's when they will start to feel not necessarily anxious, but they might feel really stressed. They might feel nervous. And what tends to happen in this situation is that riders put themselves under the kind of pressure that means that they stop living in the moment. Now, the problem with this is that if you're not in the moment, you can't really focus all that well. And you can't really create the results you want just by thinking about winning or thinking about being placed or thinking about producing a particular performance. You actually need to stay focused on one step at a time. And often these riders will only have goals that relate to the outcomes they want to achieve. But the best way to achieve your outcomes is actually to focus on the small steps that you need to take to get there. So it's things like, you know, if you want to jump double clear, well, first of all, you've got to have walked the course. You know, if you're an eventer, you've got to have walked the course. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to have warmed up well. You've got to have got a good canter. You've got to focus on where you're going, one fence at a time. That's the job of the rider. But actually, these guys in this mindset will tend to focus on just the result, and they won't stay in the moment. And staying in the moment's really important. So if you identify with this mindset, just be careful that you make sure that you've got some goals that relate to the job you need to do, rather than just the outcomes that you want to achieve.